One observation I'd like to make about undercover agents and working undercover, and this took me a couple of decades to really realize, is an undercover agent and a con man are essentially the mirror images of each other. What does a con man do? A con man assumes a fictitious ID. He assumes fictitious roles. He uses ruses. And he ingratiates himself with an honest person in order to gain that honest person's confidence. And then, once he's gained that person's confidence, he then uses that to profit off of it, to get that person to do something that is not in that person's best interest. That's what con men do. If you've seen movies by David Mamet, you see it all the time. An elaborate sting is set up. They get the confidence of this target, and then, boom, they're off with the target's money. So what does an undercover agent do? An undercover agent is doing exactly the same thing from the other side. The undercover agent assumes a notional identity, uses ruses, fictitious IDs, fictitious cars which are designed to make a certain impression, and then gains the confidence of a criminal. Works carefully, elaborately to get the confidence of the criminal, and then cause that criminal to do something which is not in his or her best interest, i.e. engage in criminal activity with the undercover so that the undercover can develop evidence to be used in the case. So in that sense, they share very similar characteristics. And it's, to me, an interesting way of perceiving it. Another thing about undercover agents is that they have to be exceptional at developing rapport. So the techniques that one uses to be a good undercover agent are techniques that you can use or apply in other contexts. I had to learn to observe someone, to develop, in terms of developing a relationship, to identify what it would take for that person to like me and to trust me. So I had to essentially study the individual, learn about the individual, and then modify my behavior such that that person would want to have a relationship with me. So these are useful skills which can be applied outside of the undercover. It can be applied in the corporate sector, where, let's say, even to sales. If you're looking to improve sales, you can be using exactly the same techniques. What buttons do I need to push with this or that person to get that person to like me and buy something from me? So the undercover skills are skills which are applicable in other areas. And I'll give you an example. There was one case where the target was involved in somewhat white-collar activity on a low level, but was also, it turned out, selling counterfeit money, counterfeit $50 bills. And this was like a very tough, hard case type of guy. He was a Dominican. Santiago Curis was his name. And he was about yay tall. He wore a black leather trench coat, had spiky hair, and he was the leader of a posse. He had his own gang. And so I had to develop a relationship with this guy. And what was the role that I adapted for myself? I pretended to be a fugitive from Miami. So at that time, I had long hair, I had a ponytail. I would put gel in my hair. I'd wear 3 or 4 bracelets, 2 or 3 necklaces, which were seized property, courtesy of the FBI seized property unit, worth maybe $10,000, $20,000 worth of gold. And I would drive a car. I had a Mercedes 500 SEL, and what I did is I got Metro-Dade, which is in Miami, license plates for the car. This car had never been south of Brooklyn, but it had Florida plates on it. So when I would show up for a meet, I would drive up in this luxury car with Florida plates. And in those days, I'm talking about late 90s now, Miami meant cocaine. I mean, when people thought Miami, they thought cocaine. So if the bad guys would see me show up in a high-end car with Florida plates, and I get out of the car, I've got a ponytail, I got some bling, I got gel in my hair, before I open my mouth, I'm 90% home. They're already thinking I'm some kind of like dangerous type of guy, probably involved with drugs. And in that particular case, this guy, Santiago, came to look up to me, because I was maybe 5 or 6 years older than him. So he saw me as a mentor, as someone whose respect he wanted to earn. He saw me as a real hard case. You guys looking at me now probably think, how can this guy be believed as a hard case? But that's the way he perceived me, as a tough guy. And that was the aura that I projected. And based on the relationship we developed, he started selling me the counterfeit money. And ultimately, as I described before, he was acting in his non-self-interest, because at the end of the day, he and his partner being a guy, just to give you an idea of the kind of characters I was dealing with, his partner was being investigated by the NYPD for renting machine guns for drive-by shootings and holdups. So that was his business. So these are the two kinds of guys that I was meeting with, and but they came to respect me as a fellow hard case, and ultimately ended up going to prison because of that.